storytelling. Yes. Do we have Melissa? Yes, here she is. Yay. Melissa, can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
Oh my God, look at that, it's working. All right. So we have, first on stage next to me, we have Lena Thiele. And Lena is from, and I've now lost it, I'm sorry, Lena, creative director and consultant, Miiqo.
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 Miiqo Studios.
Miiqo Studios,
So
which is in Berlin.
complicated names.
It's a complicated name, but we like it. And on Skype, we have Melissa Eccles. She's creative director, immersive entertainment at Elastic, which is in Los Angeles. So the way we're going to do this is they've both got case studies. What can I just say? Isn't it great to have two women talking on a panel? Can I just say that? Okay. Go, ladies.
Three, exactly.
Well, three, okay, fine.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just the moderator, but no, that's great. So I'm really happy to have you both here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to Melissa a little bit first. We're going to run Melissa's case study, talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to get Lena to cue up her case study, and then we're going to talk together, the three of us, and then we're going to bring you guys in. So that's basically the state of play, just so we know what we're doing. So, Melissa, just to start with you, what's interesting about what you're doing is you've been putting together the whole experience that's Game of Thrones when it's not on television, as far as I understand. So can you walk us through how did you come up with the ideas to feed the audience, so to speak, to engage the audience when they don't have the actual television show to engage with? Because as I understand it, that's what you've been up to. So give us a sort of a 30,000-foot look at that, how that all developed.
Sure. So the show creators came to us for some help between seasons 4 and 5. And, you know, it's kind of a long winter, as they put it, between seasons. It's about 9 months on HBO.
Yep.
And so for us, it really became about what can we do for fans to keep them in the world. And so we started looking at what is it that they really want, you know, where are they having conversations? And, you know, through all that research, we figured that ultimately they just wanted to be able to connect with the characters and stay in that world when it was off the air. So we did 2 projects between seasons 4 and 5. The first project was called The Site. And the site gave fans the ability to see the future in the same way that the characters can. And I won't say too much more about it because we'll run the case study on it. But ultimately, it was about having a contextual experience, the story, and being emotionally in the same state as a character on the show. And then the second project we did is the Game of Thrones Compendium, which is actually still live at gameofthronescompendium.com, which is an aggregate of bringing the best fan-created content around the show on the web into an actual printed book that we're releasing next month in December.
And so both of these live on the internet, right?
Correct.
Okay. And give us kind of a global feel for how many people have interacted or played with this so far.
Well, with the site, we had about 250,000 people participate. So that's 2% of the peak audience. The peak audience for Game of Thrones is 17 million viewers.
Wow.
And if you think about that, 2% might sound small, but that 2%, that 250,000 people, generated 47 million impressions and around 15 million interactions. So that's views, likes, shares, things of that nature.
Wow.
And, you know, that's pretty significant when you look at that little slice of the audience. And it was because they were having experience that the characters were able to have as well. And that really drove them to participate and then talk about ultimately, you know, what it was that they had experienced. And additionally, you know, we made the experience contextual to the show so that they had it the same ways the characters had it. So, for example, if you are going to have a premonition, you don't go to bed the night before and go, wow, I'm going to have the craziest, most visceral dream. You have no idea it's coming.
Right.
So in the same way, when we delivered these visions to people, there was no rhyme or reason, there was no pattern, there was no expectancy of when they were going to arrive. And so when they did arrive, they were surprising. And then throughout the process, they also behaved in the same way a dream did, in the sense of the longer you're awake, the more minutes you have of wakefulness, the more it recedes into your subconscious. So these visions were ephemeral. And they also had a timer as far as they could be played. So when you think about that, those are 2 things that you don't do content, according to the rules of content, right?
Right,
You
right.
always want people to make them shareable, and you always want people to be able to replay them. And we took both of those things away from the audience for this experience because it wouldn't have been authentic to what the characters experienced otherwise. And through that scarcity that we created, we actually ended up weaponizing time. So that people had to experience them right away when it happened to them. And that actually drove, the success and the virality of the project.
Oh, I love it when you use phrases like weaponizing time. So explain what that means, because we are in Berlin here. When you say weaponize time, what do you mean? Do you mean make it that you have to do it then, just then?
Yes, you have to do it. Well, you have to do it once you click the link. So the way it worked,
Immediate,
and we'll see this
okay.
in the case study, is you receive a link either through SMS or through a direct Twitter message. And once you click that link, the link burns, secret agent style. So link's dead, can't share it, can't do anything with it. And once you've clicked that link, it takes over your phone. This was a mobile-only experience. And you get to view the vision. And the vision also has a timer on it. And we did that because we didn't want people necessarily grabbing these visions and re-recording them and placing them on the internet, even though we knew that's exactly what people were going to do.
Yeah. And did, I'm sure.
Actually, for us, that was a great measurement of how successful the campaign was, is that there were people sitting there, with their phone and their iPad at the same time, ready to capture what they were seeing on their mobile device with another device so that they could then put it up on the internet and analyze it later.
I love it. Okay, is this the right moment to run the case study?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, let's run the Game of Thrones.
The winter between seasons of Game of Thrones is long. How could we satisfy fans' desire for the world of Westeros? We could give them the power to see the future, just as the characters. We could give them the power of the sight. To open an emotional entry point back into the world, we released a mysterious vision on social media.
I see a darkness in you.
Fans flocked to threeeyedраven.com to receive the visions via SMS or Twitter DM. The mobile-only visions were immersive, in-world glimpses of the upcoming season. Like a dream, the experience of a vision was disorienting, erratic, and ephemeral. Each unique vision was single view and unshareable. Links burned and content disappeared. Because you can't rewatch a dream. To preserve the experience, fans had to talk about it. Conversation skyrocketed. They shared whatever they could remember or capture by any means. We frustrated fans, but they wanted us to do it again. Over 12 weeks, we sent over 600,000 visions. Using geo-based randomization, we varied the content experience, building up to final visions that revealed a clearer view of future events.
You brought 90 clans to come together for the first time in history, because none of them have survived the winter, not if they're north of the wall.
We set out to push our fans outside their comfort zone, so we didn't just measure traditional analytics, it was the psychographics that counted. We harnessed fans' love and aggression, giving them a visceral and authentic emotional connection to the show a full 5 months ahead of the premiere. Using an erratic distribution model in combination with ephemeral content, we weaponized time. Shocking an unshockable audience.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So just, I mean, sort of this is a conference about creative storytelling and technology. So what was the biggest issue to get the creative story that is Game of Thrones, that's so multi-layered, that's so complex, outside of the TV box? I mean, you did it you came up with some really interesting stuff. How did you get there? What was that process like? Creatively?
Well, it really was about starting with the story and what could we do to tell the story and what was it that fans wanted that traditionally they couldn't have during the off season. And ultimately, it was a glimpse of the future. So we were doing this a full 6 months ahead before the show came back on air, which is kind of unheard of for a show as secretive as Game of Thrones, considering the content, began to diverge from the books last season. For them to be putting out anything that would be completely overanalyzed on the internet about the story that far ahead of time. So, they took a big risk with us and they trusted us to say, no, it's going to be positive if we put out this content and start the speculation versus, keeping everything so close to the chest. So we decided that the best way to release that kind of information wasn't to do promo trailers, wasn't to drop a bunch of, photos from behind the scenes on the set, but was to really let people experience the future of the story the same way that the characters are going to experience the future of the story, which was through these premonitions.
Very, very cool concept. Okay, just if you could just hold on here, and we're going to go to Lena now for a little bit and hear about her, and then we'll bring you back in and we'll have a wider conversation. So Lena, you've had a slightly different experience in terms of what you've done, and the case study you've brought is Netwars. But I want you to set it up. But basically, when we were talking before, what I thought was so interesting about this was that it started really as a documentary film about some hackers, right? And it was on Arte and ZDF, correct?
Yes, well, it was a production company, the production company Filmtang, based in Berlin, formerly a classical documentary production company, but now also moving into digital media. And they planned the TV documentary and the graphic novel app, which was fiction. And they approached us.
And the graphic novel was printed, yes?
No, it was an app, so it was like an interactive for the tablet. And they approached us because they wanted to somehow widen it to the online world, so they approached us coming into the project.
So this all happened sort of at the same time?
That happened at the same time, so they came to us and saying, listen, the documentary is just rough script, and we have the classical things like getting the documentary out, and yes, we have the graphic novel, but somehow we want to go online and do something because we want to move into that direction. So they approached us, and it was quite interesting what happened then in my head, because the project Netwars is about the topic of cyber warfare. And I was thinking quite a lot about what are we going to do if we talk about the technology and, of course, the danger in the technology and going into that technology, because we wanted to go online, we wanted to go on the web, we wanted to go on the mobile. So how do we do it? So I think the first thing that we decided for the concept was, okay, we want to use the technology to show the user its weakness. And I will show you later in the case study. I think you will see how we've done it. And the second thing was the feeling that I had, it's so abstract. If I talk to people about technology, and they said, I've got nothing to hide, so that was before Snowden, and the interesting thing was after Snowden, they said, I've got nothing to hide apart from my porn, so that was the only thing. But basically, it didn't change. And I had the feeling, okay, how do I get that topic, even if the revelation of Snowden did not change it, how can you get it close to people? And that's when I had the feeling I need a character, I need a face. And I was thinking quite a lot how that could work. And there are two things when I think about technology. Always, it's one thing, it's good looking, we have the nice MacBooks, nice mobiles, it's some charming, it's surrounding us, it makes life easy, but still you just don't really know what's happening. So there's this little danger there that you cannot put the finger on, and that's what somehow we wanted to impersonate in this character talking to the people. And when
you wanted to take those concerns and have it personified in this character that you were going to create to help you tell the story in a transmedia environment. Interesting, okay.
And when the character was there, then I said, okay, there's a character. We're doing the design, the corporate identity. We created a whole world, so the character has a real life and a backstory and everything, because I needed that to make it that I really could feel it. So why not setting it up as an IP? So we were sitting with the producer and saying, okay, let's create the IP Netwars, and it will contain the TV documentary. We will set up an online platform. We have this 5-part web series that we have as a case study. We will have the graphic novel, which is fiction. And the good thing is that for the producer, that this world, I think it works, because a publisher came and they also licensed the IP. So there was an ebook and an audiobook series, and now a paperback novel, 5-part novel series. So
Wow,
they're
okay, so
enhancing the
you
world.
had the vision, because in the last panel we talked about
don't
how
know how to
important it
talk
was to
about it,
hold
yeah.
IP, right? And they all said it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Sam said it, Heinrich said it.
Yeah.
And you had the vision to say, you know what, we should own this IP. If we're going to create this world and this character and all these things, we should own the IP, so then you can license and do all these other
Yeah,
things.
because
Okay.
we thought setting up a world and a character.
And does that
makes
help you
sense.
creatively as well, owning the IP? I suppose it does, because then you can use it differently and depending on what format you're trying to create for.
That was the idea then. If we
Okay.
already have 3 formats and a website, why not thinking in a world and really create a Bible? And that's where, of course, this whole transmedia approach came in. And especially with that kind of topic and integrating facts and fiction. So you have all those kind of different approaches to one topic. So I thought it would be nice to have like a world keeping those all those elements, of course, together. So we created the world, and we have the different formats. And the web series was there to really make people aware of the project, but also for the topic.
So what we're going to see is the web series, right?
Yes, we see the approach of the transmedia in the beginning, but then the web series, because this is then what we really did, the creative direction and the art direction and the production. We as a company together with the production company.
And this has won a couple of prizes, the Grimmer Prize, I think, and it also won a South by Southwest
Yes.
Festival Prize, which
Yes.
is very exciting, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
All right, so what is it? Let's watch the clip, yeah?
Yes,
All right,
go ahead.
If we could run the Netwars clip, that would be great.
Every day, we get alarming news about data spying, cybercrime, digital attacks on infrastructure, and manipulation of minds on the internet. The transmedia project Netwars provides a tangible experience of the potential dangers of cyberwar using 5 different platforms: a 52-minute TV documentary, a full, responsive 5-part interactive web documentary, a fictional interactive graphic novel for tablets, an ebook and audiobook series, and a paperback novel. With a provoking and interactive mix of facts and fictional drama, consumers of the cyberspace become engaged in an immersive story world over all platforms. In the center, the salesman, a notional cyber weapons dealer.
This is not about petty crime. This is about war. Miiqo, the ultimate game.
In the 5-part interactive web documentary, the salesman shows the audience just how vulnerable they really are.
How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? When everything around you suddenly goes dark.
Netwars, Out of Control, puts the user in the center of our fragile modern society. It delivers the facts behind a series of highly personalized, emotional cyber war scenarios. The webdoc uses new ways of immersive storytelling by integrating highly emotional fictional narrative with scientific information and data visualizations. International expert knowledge gives an insight into the world of cyber warfare and its international political dimensions. Gaming elements trigger the user's credulity and reveal how easily they could be affected.
Do you really think that you have nothing to hide? Well, I'm sorry to say it, but you do, my friend. You just don't know it yet.
Great. Very interesting.
Thank you.
So tell us, how many people interacted? Did it get a lot of traction? How did it get viralized? I mean, what happened with the web series?
You mean in numbers?
Yeah, the numbers, yeah.
Well, we started parallel with the documentary. So while the documentary was aired, and we had it, the web series released on our own platform on Arte, and we got Heise, which is quite a huge German IT website, which is quite interesting because we got a completely different audience into the project. And till now, I think we get around 250,000 unique users, which is quite good.
That's very good.
Because it's an independent production. And I think almost 2.3 million hits. And what's quite nice is that we still got an average time of 8 minutes. So it was up to 12 at some point, but 8 minutes on
average
on the
That's good
website,
too.
which is good. So it's looks like people are staying.
And what's the future for it? Will there be a second series, or is this a one-off standalone?
Well, it's at the moment the production company just talked to me and said that there are other customers asking them for the IP, asking us if we could keep on work. So
well, that's good.
seems like it's going on, and there's still the TV fiction idea for a TV fiction series, but that's also on the table of the production company. So, but I'm quite happy to see that somehow it seems to work, the world that we created, and convincing people.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So you might get another web series, which you could control because you've got that IP.
Exactly.
And then the production company might do a television type series as well.
Yes, and there are also thoughts about education, so how we could use this character and the kind of format of the web series for educational purposes in companies and stuff like that, which is quite nice.
Very interesting. So, Melissa, if I could bring you back in. Can you hear me? Yes, you're there?
Yep.
Good.
I'm here.
Let's talk a little bit about the toolkits that you need to make these kind of experiences work, because they're slightly different toolkits in terms of technology and things that you need. Melissa, why don't you go first? How did you have to think differently in terms of when you're doing an immersive or transmedia story? What kind of tools did you need technically to make it work?
Well, for this particular job, we did a custom piece of software for the distribution platform. We leveraged 2 different APIs, one for Twitter, one for SMS. We actually used an API through a company called Twilio. And then, we had to create all the content in itself as well, plus the encryption. All of these were HLS encrypted. So the purpose was that they couldn't be ripped either off of a server, through a string when people were looking at the link, or, in the process of actually them being played.
Yep.
And the reason for that was just to keep it feeling intimate and keep that ephemerality alive. But, for every project, we really go back to the story. What's the emotional entry point, and what is the contextual element that we want to leverage? And once we figure out those 2 things, we really let the story drive the interface selection. So what makes sense? For Game of Thrones specifically, we wanted it to feel intimate. Dreams are something that happen obviously inside your own head, in your subconscious. And really the most intimate way to communicate with people anymore is their phones. And that's, it's actually probably the most intimate object that we have, at least that we're going to take out in public with us. And we wanted that intimacy to stay intact. So we chose that to be a mobile-led and actually an exclusively mobile experience.
Very interesting. So, Lena, when you talked about yours, we talked a little bit about tools. You talked about agile software development. What does that mean? How did you have to think differently about how you put this together?
Well, I think that's what we're as a company coming from, doing a lot of game development and software development, that we stick to so-called agile, which is, so there are a lot of models, but 2 different models that people normally talk about. One is the waterfall system, which means you define and specify, to keep it very simple, everything in the beginning, and then you have to produce like this, which normally when you work with film production companies, they try to work with you also that way. And this is completely not working with a project like this. So we stick to that kind of agile process, which means, of course, we have like a high-level concept, but then what we did here is bringing everyone in the room. So the fiction director, the scriptwriter, the documentary director, the technical director, and reworking the script. That's the one thing. And then we're doing prototyping. So you have like little iterative, is it right?
Yeah, iterative, yep. Iterations.
Circles that you work with. And of course, things are changing by then, which sometimes can drive a producer quite crazy because you look at it. But I think it's the only way how you can really test, especially the more interactive you become with people. The more you really have to test if things are working. And then there are different prototypes, like we did a prototype for the character, that's what I told you,
for the salesman.
Right? For the salesman, if he's working, and we had it in a huge cinema, which was quite interesting, if he would really work. And we had.
So when you say a prototype, did you actually have like
it was a teaser. It was the first teaser that we shot, and see if he is working.
And so did you bring in an audience into a theater?
No,
did you put it on the web? What did you do?
The funny thing is, it was at a Story Drive conference, so it was a public, and I was sitting there like, okay, now it's going to happen, so people will somehow react to him, and let's see if he's working or not. Right. But people hated or liked him, and I said, okay, that's cool.
That's good,
so
as opposed to being
exactly. At least people are really heavily reacting to him, so that's exactly what I wanted. And we had interface prototypes, technical prototypes, performance prototypes. So this is what we do. And then we create step by step the whole project. And that's how we work.
And I think our approach is similar to that too. I mean, we were working in Agile as well. I mean, you know, between the whole team, we had about 35 people that ultimately had a hand in creating this, between the technical and development teams, the encryption teams, and then, you know, the editors for the content as well.
In terms of executing it, Melissa, what about, you know, how do you add new layers of technology? Did you find that in terms of, I mean, maybe workflow is the right phrase here, you know, how did you actually manage that process?
As far as workflow tools,
Yeah.
you know, actually we use a combination of things. We use Slack, we use Basecamp, we use Dropbox. The nice thing about Slack is it actually integrates with all those products. But ultimately, you know, we had secure footage being pushed from Post in Ireland over to us as they were filming here in LA. So that's a tool that we use called Aspera to make sure that that stays secure. But, you know, when it comes down to the technology we use, we actually use some pretty old mundane technology. I mean, SMS and Twitter are, you know, ancient compared to things that are coming out now. But
I love it. Like, what's the new one for you? Snapchat, or is that also ancient? I suppose that's
no,
ancient
Snapchat's kind of old news too.
Yeah.
But I mean, what we're working in now is we're actually working on creating a dynamic experience that has augmented reality, interactive elements within virtual reality. So that's kind of like where our new stuff is going.
Cool.
But yeah, definitely cool.
So that is that going to be on? You'll put that on mobile devices, or will people have to have some kind of, you know, Netgear headset, or what?
Specific VR hardware in order to do the streaming elements for now. And so Oculus, I think, is going to be the one that we're going to end up using for that project. But that is not Game of Thrones related. That's for a different client. But, you know, ultimately, I think it isn't about the technology necessarily. It's about, you know, what technology fits the story, because the technology isn't the idea. I mean, if we would have, you know, made the technology the focus, the delivery of how we did this, the focus of the project, I don't think it would have been as successful. It was about the experience we were creating, the ability to bring people back into the world that really was the focus. And so for that reason, we were able to leverage technology that allowed it to be intimate and secure, but ultimately to get out of the way.
So Lena, when we talk about the story, because I mean, Melissa said, you know, it comes back to the story and the storytelling, and I think you'd probably agree with that. How deep does the story need to go when you're in one of these transmedia type environments? I mean, where do you put the narrative, and how much interaction do you allow the audience to have? I mean, in a way, it's sort of like, you know, you don't want to have them have too much interaction, because then you'll lose the thread of the story, or do you? I don't know. Maybe that's the new storytelling.
Well, I think it really depends, and I mean, normally I like to argue, but I can just agree with Melissa. So,
oh damn! Come on, you have to disagree on something.
Please argue?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because I really think normally what you do is you have a story and you want to create an experience, and you think towards your audience, and then you decide your tech and your platform, and then of course tech is technology that is a huge creative pool. And then you, I think, also have to decide how much interaction do you allow. For that format, for example, it's very closed. So you can interact, but it's quite linear. But there were reasons for that, to do it that way, because we knew we couldn't really handle, there was no one who could handle it, and I had the feeling to get the kind of intense story in that series, I need to somehow close it. But of course, there are possibilities and other concepts where you can open it up. And then, of course, it comes back when you talk about real transmedia. You need a Bible, but that's also something Melissa, she worked, I think, with a very hard Bible, I can imagine, with Game of Thrones, that she had to stick to it. And I think this is something, I don't have a problem with opening up the story, but it's really a decision depending on what I want to achieve on which platform and which format, and how do I feed it in. So.
And Melissa, it also has to do with, you know, how, as you say, as Lena says, how strict the Bible is, or what kind of things you can do. I mean, did you run up against, you know, the Game of Thrones producers of the show saying, no, you cannot do that, sorry, no, that's too far?
Absolutely. But, you know, it was a very collaborative process. We worked really closely with Dan and Dave, the creators of the show, and Carolyn Strauss, the EP that also created the show with the guys. And, you know, it was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of discussion. It was like, okay, where are we going to start? What are the story points we want to highlight? What are the things we want to give people a glimpse into? And we started with about 60 different possibilities for what we were going to show in the visions, and we ended up releasing 12. And there were various reasons for that.
60 to 12.
60 to 12. And some were simply that they were setting up something that was going to happen in season 6, that if we would have released it, would have spoiled the experience when they were actually watching the episode. So, you know, we don't want to spoil it for the fans either. We want to make sure that this experience enriches their ability to enjoy the world and enjoy the show. And then, you know, there were other things that were just practical considerations, like, no, we'll need VFX for those particular things, and they won't be done on time.
Let's talk a little bit about, to both of you, about the costs of doing these kind of things. Now, I'm not talking about absolute cost, because I don't want I know you can't reveal absolute cost, but in terms of time and, let's say, proportion of where you put your money, you know, what is the thing that's the most expensive? Lena, why don't we start with you? When you think about how to build a budget around something like this, what do you have to think about? You know, where do you know that you're going to have to put your costs? What changed maybe in your experience in terms of, oh my God, we suddenly have to put more cost here, we didn't know that? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm happy that I'm not mainly a producer, but of course I think the interesting thing is, because for me writing and building the concept, you have to think about those things, right? Because you need to get it done. And I think one thing that you always have to keep in mind is that the cost to maintain a project like this, to really do the community management, to interact with users, is something that a lot of people even don't put in their budget.
That's true.
Still.
Yeah.
And the second thing is when it comes to technology, for example, that I think one experience that I always have is that people bring in technologies just to execute. And I think that is a huge mistake. You need them in the beginning, in the creative process, really telling you what you're going to do and figure out where really the high costs are really hidden, because you sometimes just don't know. You have an idea. And then with that project, for example, I mean, again, it depends, but the web series had an equal part in the costs, even if it was just a web series and didn't have a revenue model. And I think this is, again, a thing when you build transmedia projects, to see which project costs what and aims for what, and then where the revenue model lies. So where do you talk to which audience and bring him to what platform, and how do you finance, and then, of course, refinance your costs with which elements of your whole project.
Yeah, very interesting. Melissa, from your perspective, what was the cost-benefit analysis for all this? So where did you have to put your money or your time to make the thing work? And what changed maybe as you were halfway through and you went, oh my God, we have to do something more here or something less there?
You know, I think Lena made some great points about making sure you're looking at maintenance and optimization elements as well in your budget. And I do absolutely agree that your technology partners have to be there from the beginning. They're partners for a reason, because they do make the experience better. For us on this particular project, I mean, a majority of the cost came from building the distribution platform, since that was a custom software build. And, you know, we were also integrating geolocation sniffing and a randomization algorithm as well based on location. Oh, okay. So, you know, but a majority of the time, you know, the hours, so to speak, of man hours were spent in development. But I guess the thing that threw us for the loop a little bit was the support for HLS encryption. You know, you can look at what different platforms and different operating systems publish for their standards and their support. And we found that even though these items were supposed to have been supported, that they were in fact not in reality. And so we had to make a tough decision about creating a fallback format of a different type of video encryption for those people that were having a hard time seeing the files based on the encryption issues, or whether or not it was such a small percentage of the audience, if it was prudent with the length of the program to do the development for a fallback, you know, simultaneously while still releasing the other format.
Interesting. I'm going to open up to questions from the audience now. Does anyone have a question for either Melissa in LA or Lena here on the stage? Something about what they were doing in terms of creating transmedia stories? No? Well, keep thinking. Here's one there. Put your hand up again so she can see you. Yep, there you go. Pass it to this fellow. You again. That's fine. Anyone else? Oh, come on. All right, go ahead. Tell her who you are, because she can't see you.
Yes. Hey, both of you. My name is Marcus. I'm author and journalist from Germany. The question for both of you, but I think more to Lena. First thing I saw when I saw the project and the little trailer, I didn't recognize it on the web before, so maybe I will check it out later.
Yes, do so.
Definitely, but I thought this is maybe perfect for education proposals. Did any teacher come to you, knocked at your door and ask you, hey, can we do something to educate children because they would love it? A little bit gaming, a little bit of chatting, and then a book, and then did
Well,
this
you
happen?
don't know the ending, so maybe for children it's a little bit too hard. But
Yeah,
No,
maybe just
but
like
to be
15, 16
serious,
years old.
No, you're right. That's what I said. Companies. The interesting thing is that companies are approaching the production company and we had several companies asking to teach their internal persons and workers for cybersecurity in companies, and. And we saw a lot of people on the web in smaller communities answering that they're using it for working for education, but not really schools. So it's more companies or private people, but definitely so.
I don't know if you have an answer for that, Melissa. Educational properties, I'm not sure there is a
We
use
really
there,
don't have an
maybe?
application for what we created for Game of Thrones for education, but we are working with a couple other clients right now on some educational projects utilizing some more non-traditional tech and immersive learning experiences. So some things that are integrating VR, some things that are integrating AI, and allowing people to learn in ways that are more in-world, for lack of a better term, the subject that they're studying, than the traditional directed learning methods.
Another question from the audience? No? Okay, I have another one. I don't have any hands, no. What tools do you wish you'd had, that you didn't have when you were actually doing this? Lena, first.
Tech tools, you mean?
Oh, tech tools, yeah, tech
Oh,
tool, anything, Anything that you thought, oh my God, if we just had that.
I think, of course, more budget, right? And
More budget,
more
okay,
time.
fine, that's-
No, because the programmers once said, we will create you a little corner where you can go and cry for all the ideas that we couldn't move in. So that's my corner that I could move into, because there were, of course, a lot of ideas that didn't make it.
Yeah, well, with Melissa too. What would you say, 60 and what did you get,
Yeah.
12 or something came out?
Yeah.
So Yeah.
So I think that's
the crying
for
corner,
me.
we'll call it.
Well,
Yes.
where I got the crying corner, but
Okay, Melissa, anything any kind of technology or tool or thing that
I wish we could have sent messages in greater numbers. So we were only able to, even though we had Twitter take off their master controls for us, which was pretty cool, we could still only do about 10 direct messages per second. And so that meant that it actually took almost a full day to message all the users their visions. And it would have been nice if we could have seen like a massive hit and seen what that looked like at scale in order to measure kind of the conversation a little bit better.
What was the limitation on that? Was that just Twitter's limitation technology-wise, or was it a...
Yeah, they just couldn't serve them faster than that.
Wow.
And it's different than putting something in a feed. We didn't want, the visions and the link to the visions to go in the feed, because the link's burned and somebody else could have, clicked your link and then you were out of luck. But also it doesn't feel very intimate, your Twitter feed, where, a direct message or a text message feels a little bit more personal. And so they just didn't have the ability to look at that vast number of actual Twitter handles and message each handle individually en masse.
Did the actors at all get involved in this? Your real actors from the Game of Thrones? I mean, did they actually want to be involved in this or get involved in this in any way or not?
They were really excited about it. They actually got more involved with our other project, which is the compendium.
Okay.
Part of that is, likeness images and things like that, and just kind of seeing how they were portrayed. Although all of them were super excited about the artwork and the creations that came back from our fans. But, as far as the visions went, they were excited to see what people made of them, what people thought it meant, and all the conversation that went around. The first one that we teased on social media to drive signups, everyone thought Arya suddenly had the power to see the future, that she had the same power as her brother Bran. And, the cast thought that was wonderful.
Even though it wasn't true, right? What?
Exactly, but that's part of the fun of the show.
I'm up on my Game of Thrones trivia. I know these things. Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, I have one more then. Melissa talked about, did you want to ask her
No, it's
something?
fine. I just. it's
Okay,
fine.
we're having a
That's
little, don't worry, Melissa,
Yes.
everything's fine. The audience is still here. I was going to ask one more thing. Melissa had already talked about using VR and AR
Yes.
going forward and how that was kind of in her sort of new toolkit that she was going to go. What are you thinking about? What kind of technologies, either distribution or in creation technologies, do you think are the most exciting going
Maybe
forward?
we should invite Thomas back here, right, to join
Yeah.
us. Well, of course, VR is, and also AR, but AR is, there's a lot of promotion videos, and I haven't had something in my hand yet where I'm really convinced of. Because we are creating more experiences, of course, VR is part of the thinking that we are experimenting with. But always depending on what kind of story and content we have and we want to deliver in which way. But yes, we're working with it, and it's a lot of fun. So they become curious again, just to try out new things. So that's
Yeah. Any last word from LA, Melissa?
No, I'm just so pleased I could be with you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really great having you, and I'm sorry you couldn't be here in person, but we really appreciate you doing the Skype call. And I'd like to have all of us thank Melissa and also Lena Thiele, so Melissa Eccles and Lena Thiele, for their participation in this transmedia storytelling through tech session. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.